How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. I just want to say congratulations on the documentary.
Thank you.
Uh, Learned a lot about Wham I didn't know. Like, I'll be real with you, I'm so ignorant that I didn't even w realize "Wake Me Up Before You Go" was their song. So, um,
But this was a number one in America, possibly before you were born.
oh yes, yes. When it said 1985, I was like, yeah, I see the time and context of this really came in the frame as I'm watching it. And like my first question is like I'm obviously a journalist and press. It's crazy to me how they were vilified by the British press for doing this. Um, were there any press members who were alive that you could reach out to during this time when you were doing this documentary?
Yeah, I mean, there's two in the film. So there's Rick Sky, who was one of the more kind of tabloid style journalists, and another guy called David Wigg, who was from one of the other newspapers. There was a few others that we spoke to who were there. Obviously, there's a lot of different perspectives in the film, so we needed to represent the documentary crew, the road crew, and the press. The press story is one of kind of five big narrative layers in the film, and as you say, it is insane how our press were in the 80s, you know?
Yeah, I mean, these people are trying to just, I don't know, wham, and the performance. I was like, wow, this is a hell of a performance. To for them to be like, oh, you guys are communists for going to China, and I'm like, well, they're building a bridge for culturally to build a bridge musically. Uh, how was it watching this footage and then incorporating this into the overall narrative? Because I was just, that's when I was like, really like, wow, this is insane on many different levels.
You know, the extraordinary thing about this was we didn't know what footage we were going to get. There's two existing films, one of which was never shown and wasn't particularly great, and the other is the kind of pop video version of that. But what we were accessing and what we were making the film out of was the original film rushes, but shot by
Oh,
all the kind of camera guys on film, not on video, which is obviously why it looks so great. So, but no one knew what was left. No one knew what was in the cans. There was 100 cans of film that were
whoa.
40 years old. No one knew if there was going to be dust, you know, they're going to find kind of George Michael's toothbrush. Who knew? So it took months and months and months for the footage to kind of, be resurrected and kind of brought in. And it was really astonishing. It was kind of like archaeology, basically. You're kind of digging stuff up. And so even though we knew the different layers of narratives and what the different stories would be, we didn't really know how it would all fit together. And it was a very, very, very long process in the edit, as you can imagine. And it was a journey of discovery, frankly.
Well, I would like to dig deeper into that right there, which is I imagine like you had to have like what 200 hours worth of footage, like, right?
Well, we had, I mean, in terms of, it's quite complex because there was multiple cameras. We shot all the interviews and there was a lack of interviews from the archive material. Obviously, modern day documentary making is very different. So we shot about 70 hours of new interviews with 27 people, who are the people you see in the film, old George's band and road crew and everything else. In terms of the original film footage, it wasn't 200 hours, it was tens of hours. But,
Okay.
film was shot on these kind of 10-minute reels, right?
Right.
So,
Yep.
they're changing a kind of reel every 10 or 11 minutes. So imagine, you back in the day where you're putting memory cards and stuff and things, and it only lasted 10 minutes. That's insane, right? So, and there's more than one camera, often pointing at the same thing. So it was the biggest difficulty was getting it because it had been chopped up for the first two films. The stuff that's in the first two films wasn't in the rushes. It'd gone. It was in those masters. It gets removed. Um, and so we thought we might have to use those masters, but in reality, we had all this film footage and we just made the film out of that, as I said. But, it was like sifting, it was like gold digging, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you're kind of panning for the kind of gold in it. And it was a really long process. The really difficult thing was the sound files weren't synced and the film had been
Uh,
chopped up. Now, I'm sure you know how hard that,
Yes.
it took weeks, if not a couple of months, to get all the sound back in sync. It was a hell of a process. Really crazy.
I mean, I have to commend you because this is a really great documentary, only an hour and 29 minutes, and you're able to just go. It feels like I'm watching like a three-act structure, like a solid arc of them getting there, going through it. And then like, they say truth stranger than fiction, like when they were going to the next city and they hear that one of their crewmates like tried to commit suicide on the plane. I'm just like, what else is going to happen? And,
Yeah.
and and it just keeps you on your toes and predictable. Was there anything that informed you that you found out assembling this and making this that you were just like, wow, we gotta include it? But then was there stuff that like was really important, real stuff like that where you were just like not important to the narrative that we're telling, it has to go.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I did plan the three acts beforehand. So, on the wall, I had this kind of, I'd drawn, the very first day, I'd drawn the kind of, not just the three acts, but the emotional curve,
Mm,
because it starts, everyone's excited, it's a bit weird, they do the gig, and then suddenly the gig's a bit dark, and then,
okay.
the press conference, and, it's crashing down into act two. I mean, there were some of the things that amazed me were things like the press conference. So there's a press conference scene where basically the entire press turn on George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, and I was amazed at how aggressive that press conference was, and that no, the publicist, the press office, no one intervened. And these guys were like, George was 21, Andrew was 22. I mean, they're young, and they're dealing
Yeah.
with that level of ferocity from kind of pretty experienced journalists. And um and I, and I I loved sort of seeing that play out, and we kind of left that pretty much, pretty kind of, we let that breathe in the film because it's a powerful scene. But it is also a fantastic test of George and Andrew's friendship. You can sort of see how real and honest they were with each other. They'd known each other since they were 10 or 11. So I think, in itself, that was a kind of revelation about the strength of their bond and them as a team, them as a unit.
I was wondering if you could talk about Andrew because he looked so like I want to say happy to look back, like just introspectively looking back on this time. And he was very warm during the sit down interviews. And then you contrast that with the footage where, like, they'll go out to the store and talk, and everybody's on George, and it kind of feels like Andrew's being ignored. I was like, guys, Wham's two people, like, he's right there too. So, like, I wonder if you're talking like, how was it that you could contrast that between the archival and then the interview footage?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I mean, obviously he's wiser and more mature, and he's said to me that there's things that, he probably wouldn't have done now, but he stood by everything that you see in there. He didn't censor it at all. And then in terms of the difference between how George and Andrew are treated, I mean, I work with a lot of pop groups and rock groups, and it's not unusual, even, in quite big bands, that ultimately the singer is effectively the front man, right?
Yeah,
And George
right.
was the front man. And even in a boy band, I mean, they're more than a boy band; they're an amazing kind of musical act. But it's not unusual that you would sort of see that kind of hierarchy. So, and Andrew's, effectively the kind of musician. Of course, they're a kind of duo. Um, and the interestingly, I think, the press interest was almost more focused on Andrew in that period than it was on George, and he drew a lot of that fire deliberately. He was
Yeah.
protecting George in many ways.
Okay. Yeah. You get their dynamic that they do rely on each other as they're going through this like once in a lifetime situation. So like my final question is was there anything making this in their perform because like it ends on this incredible performance. Was there anything in the performance that you're just like, man, I wish we could leave it in, but we got to get rid of it. Because
I
like I
mean,
said, it's so tight. This documentary is so tight.
yeah, I mean, it was a push to get it all in. I mean, I at one point I kind of really wanted to just leave the songs intact and not have any documentary content in them, and I've done
Right.
that before. And I did a film in New Order, which I did that. But but you couldn't in this film. It needed explaining, and so getting the balance of the performances with the documentary whilst the song was playing is quite challenging. If I could leave anything in, it would be the fact that Careless Whisper, the live version, which just blew my mind, is 8.5 minutes long live, right? And I'm like, I'm aiming for an 80-minute doc. This is 89. I'm pushing the limit. You know, Sony are kind of going, oh, go easy, go easy. You know, it's like we don't want to, kind of can't be over the 90. And I'm kind of going, how much more of Careless Whisper can I get in? But hey, I think we did a pretty good job on keeping in the bulk of the song and the important stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say that was a fantastic performance with the way they just kept everybody waiting for it to drop with just the saxophone teasing you guys. Amazing.
That sax solo. I mean, I love it. The first time I heard that, goosebumps. In fact, I'm
Oh,
getting them now.
yeah, it's such honestly, it's such an amazing
Thank
documentary.
you.
Like I've learned a lot and like I can't wait to do my review and share this interview with everybody. So thank you for your time. This is
And
amazing.
you, Brandon. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank you. You
Take care.
too. Bye.
Bye.